F. Scott Fitzgerald and Charles Dickens and other respected literary figures, and Tolkien, of course. And I admire those three writers all enormously, but Stan Lee was probably more influential than any of them. The first published words of mine ever to appear were my letter in Fantastic Four number 20, which was critiquing, if you could call it a critique, Fantastic Four number 17. But my critique consisted of saying, "Move over, Shakespeare, Stan Lee has arrived." You got to wonder why Stan chose to publish that letter. But I'd read comic books, since I was a little kid. The funny animal comics, Donald Duck and
Archie.
Scrooge McDuck and Archie, all of that stuff. And then superheroes, especially the DC superheroes, Superman and Batman and The Flash and all of that. I'd read all of those. But the minute Marvel came on the scene, I think my interest in comics had actually been waning, because the DC comics of the time were stifling. They were perfectly circular. Superman he was Clark Kent. He worked for the Daily Planet. It was Perry White was the editor. Jimmy Olsen was his best friend and sort of an annoying kid. And Lois Lane was his girlfriend. And something would happen, aliens would invade, or there would be a villain or something, and Superman would have an adventure, and it would go circular, and it would end right where it began. Everything would be back in place. Nothing really ever happened in a Superman comic, which I realized after reading, 100 or so of them. You could read them in any order, because they had their template, and nothing was ever going to happen, Jimmy Olsen might become a giant turtle man during the course of the adventure, but by the end of the adventure, he would be back to being Jimmy Olsen again. There was no permanent changes. And then Stan Lee came along with Marvel, and it was the characters were fighting in the Fantastic Four. The Thing didn't like being the Thing and was constantly fighting with Johnny Storm. And they didn't have secret identities. Their identities were out there. And then Spider-Man came along, and Spider-Man, he didn't have his Lois Lane. He had a series of he had Liz Allen at first, who he had the hots for, but she preferred to bully Flash Thompson, and he couldn't get anywhere with her. And then he took up with an older woman, Betty Brant, who was Dave Jonas' secretary, and he had that relationship for a while. And then he took up with Gwen Stacy.
That didn't work out.
She died.
Yeah.
That was traumatic, but she actually died.
Yeah.
DC never killed Lois Lane or even Jimmy Olsen, although you might have wanted to. Nothing ever happened in the DCs, and a lot was happening in Marvel. You didn't know who was safe, and you didn't know what would actually happen. And time passed. I went, believe it or not, looking at the old dotard you see before you, I went to high school with Peter Parker. We were both in high school when I started reading Spider-Man comics. And just about the same time, we both graduated high school and went to college. And I went to Northwestern, and I'm in a different city. I'm making new friends. I got a roommate that I didn't know before. I'm taking new classes. It's adjusting to a whole new world. Peter Parker went through the same stuff. He went to college, and he didn't go as far away from home. But he did have to move out of the house with Aunt May. Things happened, and that was amazing. And another one of my comic book letters, I published a number of letters, was a letter away from home. But he did have to move out of the house with Aunt May. Things happened, and that was amazing. And another one of my comic book letters, I published a number of letters, was a letter to the Avengers, which again was published, and it was about Avengers number 9, I think it was, which was the issue that introduced Wonder Man. I'm not sure any of you remember this. You were probably all too young. You probably don't even remember Wonder Man. But Wonder Man came in, and he joined the Avengers, and he was a brand new hero, and he really wasn't a hero. He was a spy who was set to join the Avengers to destroy them from within. So he only was playing to be a hero, but he was actually going to destroy them from within. But then he became friendly with them, and he couldn't bring himself to destroy them from within. So he betrayed his masters, and they killed him. So he died in the same issue that he was introduced in. And I love this, of course, and I wrote a long letter about how great this was. And I look back now, and my whole career is based on Avengers number 9. I mean, introducing these gray characters who have divided loyalties, who are not what they seem. And,
I'm a little traumatized right now.
And then killing them unexpectedly.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it was comics, so they brought Wonder Man back eventually.